Hi, I'm IKEA, and I'm here to give you only the tip. Guardians Global Event. And as with all global events, we first have to opt into it by turning it on. We do that by going into the season menu, going to the current event, and turning it on with this activate, deactivate toggle. Once it is on, we can start working towards the challenges, which will earn us stars, together with every level earning a star as well, which we can spend to get caches. With the global event turned on, you will start seeing markers above enemies' heads, as we have here. The yellow one indicating a guardian, as they are guarding all nearby enemies, together with the red marker there, which indicates that that is a guarded or shielded enemy. As we see here as well, mechanicals like warhounds, mini-tanks, turrets and such, and drones do not receive guardians, although of course they can be killed much faster with the guardian buff. Once we kill a guardian, we will get a guardian buff, which we can use then to kill both shielded enemies and even unshielded enemies like that much faster, as it is a personal buff. We deal severely reduced damage to guarded or shielded enemies, meaning that while you can kill them eventually, it will take a long time. Instead, it is much better to kill the guardian, get the buff. With the buff, even though these enemies are no longer shielded, because the shielding got removed as there is no nearby guardian anymore, at that point we can even kill shielded enemies. Once we have whenever we kill a guardian, they will drop to the ground and will drop a grenade effectively at their feet. This will damage and bleed both enemies and also you if you get caught in it. One thing to know in a group setting is that it only affects the person that made the kill, as generally we cannot do anything to harm our allies directly like that. And of course, once we kill a guardian, what we get is the guardian buff. That guardian buff is very strong, as it is quite a big chunk of damage, together with a big chunk of RPM, making it one of the strongest damage outputs that we have. Polarity just barely beats it out, I think. And with it up, of course, once we have the buff on our shoulder, we see actually the duration of it, which has been increased and is actually very long nowadays. Once we have it, we can, of course, just kill even true guarded enemies, and doesn't really even matter then anymore for the event once we have the buff. Whenever we first trigger the buff as well, whenever you don't have the buff and you receive the buff, not refreshing it, meaning you do get a heal as well. And of course, once we kind of have the buff, we can just burn through enemies. There as well, with the last guardian killed, every enemy around it that was guarded by them was shocked, CCing them, meaning that it makes it even easier to kind of deal with them because they are CC'd. One tactic that can be used on a guarded enemy when we have a guardian that maybe is not easy to get to is that you can melee them. This will remove the guardianship as they get disoriented as well, giving you a moment to deal with them, and then afterwards they will re-receive the guardianship. But then of course you can break it once again and deal with them even with the guardian up in the background. That is a handy tactic to know, and also a reason to run a little bit more chunky builds where you can actually tank enemies to make this kind of thing happen. Of note as well is that enemies spawning from sewers will generally not get the guardian buff as we have here. Enemies coming up from this are separate spawns as part of the game, and because of that they do not receive guardianship until the named spawn, because the named spawns together for this control point. The name spawns together with one enemy. That is always how that system works. One important mechanic to know as well is if you destroy or heavily damage a weak point on an enemy, as we're going to do here, as we did there. These enemies all got shocked, all of the guarded enemies, removing their shielding as well, giving you a moment to deal with them if you were to need that. As we do that here again, everybody is getting shocked as I destroyed his weak point. Destruction isn't needed, you just need to heavily damage a weak point on a Guardian. And the big strength of Guardians is that it is a group-wide buff. Once one person kills a Guardian, the entirety of the team receives the Guardian's buff. And that makes it so that, especially in group settings, as we're, for instance, here going to watch a little bounty that we were doing yesterday while bounty cheesing, it can go really, really fast with this, because more so than even Golden Bullet or such, we can, once one person just gets a Guardian buff, everybody has it, and we get immense power. And here, for instance, as well, as we were talking about maybe tactics for this, using a Bullet King or a steady-handed weapon, the one thing that Guardians doesn't give you is a reload, where a lot of the other events do. Of course, both Polarity and Golden Bullet do give you a reload. Here, we can give up a little bit of damage, because the damage is really good, but then instead we take a Bullet King, for instance, where we don't have to reload, so we can just unload continuously. And as often requested with these, to give some build recommendations, from the build collection, which will be, of course, linked down below, together with these builds that I'm going to recommend. Firstly, if you are playing it solo, even though I would definitely recommend playing this one in group settings, if you are playing it solo, go with a Heartbreaker Tech Tank, or any of the tech tanks really, something which has a little bit more survivability, so you can push either through some enemies and get to a Guardian that maybe escapes, or as well, as we showed, you can melee guarded enemies to break their guardianship. And this build, of course, can just stand in front of several enemies and then just smack them in the face, remove their buff, and then deal with them, or go and deal with the Guardian. In group settings, of course, just strikers, just full red strikers. Having maybe, for instance, a form of foam or such, or some form of CC, can actually be very handy, as we showed, for just dealing with a guarded enemy that is maybe too close to you. In a group setting, 3 of these with ongoing directive for this season, with the reduced ammo directive, is my go-to, kind of. As we talked about as well, weapon choice-wise though, I would, and I am, replacing mostly to either steady-handed LMGs or or the Bullet King. As we do have enough damage, we don't have a reload with on kill as we have with Polarity or Golden Bullet, and we have an increased RPM as well, meaning that you're reloading quite a bit, so just cut out the reload. We have the damage anyway from the Guardian's buff, so might as well just go with something that you don't have to reload that often, because you will be reloading more often because of the RPM. One other tactic that you can use, which kind of works for all global events, is just to overpower it with Headhunter. In this case, for instance, a hotshot Headhunter. Here I'm showing the Habsburg, but that's maybe, of course, a little bit overkill. I'll link both to the Habsburg and just the normal Chain Hero Araldi version. But because nowadays it is just a reduction and no longer an immunity on the Guardians, if you put the first shot on a Guardian, from that point on you can indiscriminately shoot guarded or unguarded enemies from that point onwards. And to conclude this video, Guardians is especially a group-centered global event. Partially as well, one mechanic that we did not talk about here is that in a group setting, you have many more Guardians. It spawns more Guardians, basically. In a solo setting, you might have a 4-man patrol walking towards you with 1 Guardian and 3 guarded enemies. In a group setting of a 4-man setting, for instance, that will usually be 3 Guardians and 1 guarded enemy, letting you much more easily get a kill on a Guardian, just because there are many more of them. Also, this global event, as with many global events, is a good time if you haven't done some of the harder content, like legendaries, especially Guardians. If you are, for instance, matchmaking for legendaries, is the time to do it. This one is very good in group settings. There is also no basically downside where, for instance, Golden Bullet will make enemies much more powerful if they do have the Golden Bullet or some such. It is basically just get the Guardian kill, and that can be the only real challenging thing. As yeah, sometimes they do go hide in the back, but with this video I hope to have given you some of the tools to deal with that, with either meleeing them or foaming other guarded enemies and then going and killing the audience. So yeah, I hope you found this enjoyable or informative. If you did, please do any and all of the algorithm things down below. And I hope you join me in future videos. And as always, This was only the tip.